G'day, hunters. Slothface here, hunter player extraordinaire. Well, maybe not extraordinaire, but hunter player all the same. Um, we are we're going to go through my notes. I've been spending a week writing some notes for the hunter class tree, all the trees feedback. And I'm going to go through my notes here so that I refine them, and then I'm going to post on the forums after this my feedback for the hunter devs so that they can review it. I'm sure they won't even read my feedback, but this is what I'm doing. And then I'm making a video as well for anyone who wants to check out my review of these trees. Okay, so we're looking at this video is going to be about the class tree. Just the class tree. I'll do other videos for the other trees. The class trees had substantial changes that were done 7 days ago, or 8 days ago maybe. It's looking really good. I like it. The main point of feedback is it's a huge improvement over that last tree. But there's some feedback to go through. I've played many keys, I've done some stuff. I've played around with this tree a bit, and let's go through the points that I would like to see changed for this. Okay, so number one tiny little piece is that there's a missing connection on the BM version of this tree. There's a missing connection here between trank shot and counter shot, as you can see in marksman. Watch this change here. Watch this place. Boom! There's an arrow. See it? Whoosh! Right there. So it's missing that. That's just a little bug. Thought I'd point it out because I haven't seen anybody mention it yet. Anyway, let's move on to actual feedback of this tree. So there's a few things that are like pathing issues. Number one is concussive shot. Great talent, love it. Very useful in some situations. It comes off of improved kill shot. I think that this is going to be pretty much always accessible for survival and marksman. I think that there are going to be builds and times where improved kill shot is not needed or wanted for some situations. Maybe some AoE only situations, etc. Or maybe some single target for beast mastery specifically. And there might be a time where I want concussive shot. Maybe like a Raden, not Raden, what's he called? What was that boss in Sepulchre called? That had the orb spawn that you had to slow. Anyway, I used concussive shot on that fight, and I probably didn't want improved kill shot. So there's some situations where I'm going to want concussive shot and not improved kill shot. That's all I'm saying. So that potentially could be rethought about its position there. Scout's instincts. The fact that that is connected to misdirection is a little bit disappointing. Misdirection also not a very good talent for beast mastery specifically. Scout's instincts is very niche. In some fights it could be really, really good. Maybe I'm thinking like some sort of Side Denathria situation, but also just maybe PvP situations where also misdirection is not that great in PvP. So I'd like to see that reconsidered where Scout's Instinct are, because these are sometimes talents and these are also sometimes talents, and those sometimes is a different times is. Devil Saw Tranquilizer. Let's talk about this. This, I think, is an extremely weak talent. I think that it is actually potentially worse than spending a talent point on it. It might be not only better to pick something else, but it might be worse than the original one. I think it's really bad. So, removing enrages, because they're keeping the raging affix, it's a bit of a thing. Right? It's like we need to find a soothe for that week. Hunter is one of the ways to find a soothe. For the record, Kodo Trank, fine, seems powerful, good, whatever. So Devil Saw Trank, the issue is the Raging Affix was kept, and so Hunter is one of the counters to that affix. Trank Shot has a problem in that it only soothes one enrage, and 1 magical effect from an enemy target. The issue is it removes 1 enrage effect. So if a mob already enrages as its standard mechanic, and then it has the raging affix on it, or just another enrage effect, maybe there's an enrage effect that's AoE, and it buffs this thing, 1 trank shot will not dispel both enrage effects. It will also not dispel multiple stacks of an enrage effect. It will only remove 1 stack at a time per trank shot cast, right? So this means that it's very, very weak against things that have more than just 1 stack of 1 enrage on it. And then what you're saying is with Devil Sword Trank is if it removes only an enrage, its cooldown is reduced by 5 seconds, which means 5 seconds later, you can push Trank Shot again. Well, I don't really want to push Trank Shot in the first place. It's a GCD that removes an enrage, okay? The fact that I'm pushing it is an inconvenience and a necessary piece of utility. So you are increasing the amount of GCDs I need to spend to remove enrage effects, and you're not actually making me more powerful in that GCD, so it doesn't feel like a better button to push. It's the same button to push, and now I have to push it twice as often and use double the amount of GCDs to remove enrage effects, and I have to wait 5 seconds. So if I dispelled the wrong mob, I got 5 seconds of that mob hitting my tank and it might die. If I dispelled the correct mob, but there's 2 mobs, there's 5 seconds of it hitting that other mob and my tank might die. I just feel like this Devil Sword Trank should be the obvious pick on enraging weeks, and it needs to be more powerful than that. It needs to remove all enrage effects on a target. It needs to remove multiple stacks. It needs to remove multiple buffs of enrage. And ideally, it needs to hit multiple targets. All of the mobs enrage at once on raging weeks. And if this hit 3, if this was Devil Sword Trank, was instead like, you know, a Raptor Trank, so that's like dispelling a whole pack at once or something, I would like to see it dispel multiple enraged targets at once. Have Kodo Trank for the single target stuff with the double purge. Have Devil Sword Trank do multiple things. I think that having to spend 1 GCD every 5 seconds is worse than having to spend 1 GCD every 10 seconds and gaining only 1 stack of 1 enrage for this. So I would really like to see this changed. It's bad gameplay. It is not fun. It's like a quarter of your GCDs just purging an enrage. I hate it. So Devil Sword Trank, please reconsider. Okay, other issues I have are Scrappy. I think that Scrappy is very weak. It's good. It's a good idea, but it's fairly weak. Maybe that could be a bit better. Disruptive rounds. Okay, so when you design a tree, it looks like it's just like rows of talents, right? But because of the positioning of some talents, there's basically ones that are essential to get and ones that are completely optional. Like this one here is in a prime location. It's got 3 things going to it and 2 things going out of it. That makes it like you basically have to get it, right? Let me show you. So you want all this. You want this. You want this. You probably want that. And let's say I get this. Now, to get any further down, if I get this and this, then I can get these 2. But I can get just one of those, I can get these 2. So it's like a prime location. This disruptive rounds is also a prime location. So more often than not, you're going to get it because it's only 1 point to get these 2 open. Otherwise, it's these points over here and this point. Right? So the fact that disruptive rounds is in such a prime location, but it's kind of weak. Again, Trank Shot gives 10 focus, Counter shot interrupting cast gives 10 focus. I could see multiple builds that don't want disruptive rounds and kind of have to get it, because otherwise to get binding shot you have to go around the houses here, or you have to go yeah, I think it's into primer location. I think it's a bit weak. I think even if it was buffed to 20 focus, you might be happy getting it, but most of this focus is going to be wasted. I would like to see misdirection. I would like to see that be more powerful for Beast Mastery. It works great because it redirects the threat you cause, but it doesn't actually help your tank get threat when you're Beast Mastery because it doesn't misdirect your pet's threat. I'd like to see that change somehow, but yeah, it's a bit disappointing to get to misdirect something as BM. There's also a strange situation where you can actually get a lone survivor without even getting survival of the fittest, right? I could ignore survival of the fittest entirely. Still have lone survivor. I guess it gives like the 2 seconds on counter shot, but it's a little bit odd to not have to get it. Like potentially you could swap tar trap with survival of the fittest, and therefore swap entrapment and padded armor, and then this would be survival of the fittest, padded armor, lone survivor in like a line down here, and then this would be tar trap, entrapment into intimidation. You'd have a CC line and a defensive line. I think swapping these and swapping these would be a better pathing for that. Okay, let's talk about binding shots. I think any hunter that's mained it for multiple years just gets kind of sad when talking about binding shot. As a stun, it is a very disappointing button. It really needs to be changed. The problem was in Shadowlands, it was a root. It rooted for, and everyone keeps telling me whenever I post about this on the forums, a root is worse than a stun, idiot. Like, bruh, the root it used to have used to root all enemies for 8 seconds, and damage did not break the root. It was very, very, very strong. You rooted everything in place for 8 whole seconds. The tank would zoom away, and you could peel those mobs the whole time they were rooted. I see this binding shot as much utility as Master Spell is for priests. Okay, and the problem with Master Spell is they target capped it and they increased its cooldown, but they didn't just take away the utility from priest. Whereas changing binding shot to a stun has basically taken away this utility from hunter, because the play style is you throw a binding shot down. You can't stun the mobs unless they move 5 yards, which casters don't do. So you can't stun to interrupt anything. And you DR with other stuns now. And so someone else is going to stun. And then by the time maybe they do move 5 yards, it's massively DR'd stun. So yeah, it's a very disappointing button to push now. Obviously my favorite design for this would be to put it back to an unbreakable root for 8 seconds on a 45-second cooldown. However, I would be happy to say that that is too strong. Please give it the Master Spell treatment. Increase its cooldown and target cap it, or one or the other. But this was a unique piece of utility that hunters have that now we do not have. And we don't even get given an AoE stun for this. This would be, it's now basically not even as good as Ring of Frost. Okay, so if this was made as good as Ring of Frost or as good as Old Binding Shot, I'd be happy. At the moment, it is just the worst AoE stun in the game, and you cannot use it as an AoE stop. It's very disappointing. Let me just check my notes, make sure I haven't missed anything out. There's also a potential for this to be made into a true AoE stop through potentially this talent here. Obviously, the fact that Binding Shot barely stuns anything because it's got to move and then only stuns for 3 seconds, increasing that to 4 seconds is not a good talent. This is a terrible talent. I would like to see this talent could potentially turn it back to an 8-second route. This talent could turn it into having it stun things immediately, like, you know, a stun grenade type of button, which would be kind of huntery. Or this could add the L into Binding Shot and make it Blinding Shot, and it could be some sort of flashbang that disoriented the mobs, which would make it into an AoE stop. As is, tar-coated bindings is terrible. Please redesign this, but also please redesign this. There's a few options I just gave you. Okay, moving on. Territorial instincts. I personally think at the moment that this is a little bit of a failure. It can be cast without a pet. Stuns 2 additional enemies nearby for 50% effectiveness. The notes on this were that they don't want it to be usable without a pet. They want it to summon a pet if you don't have one out and stun things. So I think that's obviously designed at marksman hunters who maybe don't have a pet out. They push intimidation, a pet jumps out and stuns your target, and then boom, you've got a pet out. But not only does it stun your target, it stuns 2 additional nearby enemies. In PvE, this is pretty disappointing to not control in any way which 2 other targets get stunned. Stunning in PvE is not just so that you can have a few seconds of it not attacking you. It's usually to stop it from doing a certain ability, and this is basically RNG whether you stun the targets you want to stun or don't. And so this is not a quote AoE stop. So this is not an AoE stop, and this is not an AoE stop. It's kind of disappointing that they haven't just given Hunter an AoE stop. So either this talent needs to have Intimidation stun all targets within 5 yards, or it's just pretty undesirable. I don't know why it would be 50% effectiveness. I guess 5 seconds is a long time, but in PvP I see how this is good. But yeah, this is not a good talent. If I want to stun 3 targets, it means that there are at least 3 targets. So if you're an MM hunter, there's a large DPS loss to bring out a pet. If you're using Lone Wolf, which in an AoE situation you would use a Lone Wolf. So it's pretty disappointing to have the pet pop out of nowhere for an MM hunter. It's not a bonus, it's a detriment to do so, especially on 3 targets. For BM and survival, this is also pretty useless. Stunning 3 targets is just not worth spending this talent point on, really. I don't think you would take this. I just don't. I think it needs a redesign. So this talent, not good. This talent, also not good. Kindling Fire. Why doesn't Flare already do this? Is my question. Flare is not some OP button. Exposes all hidden invisible enemies within the target area for 20 seconds. So they're saying that this targeted area for 20 seconds, everything will be visible. And if they're hit and they run out of that, if they're revealed by flare and then run out of the flare, they're still revealed for 3 seconds. That should be what flare does. This would not make flare too strong. So kindling fire is kind of again, it's not worth spending the talent point on. And you have to go through Scrappy, which, as I said, is fairly weak, but, you know, is fine. It's good. Acceptable button. Not really an acceptable button. This should be what Flare already does. And then, here's a thought. Why isn't Kindling Fire make Flare into a flashbang grenade that disorientates or disorientates? Hey, take your pick. Wherever you're from, pronounce it your way. Let me know in the comments. This should turn Flare into a flashbang, which disorients mobs for 2 seconds or something like that. Maybe increases the cooldown of Flare at the same time to like a minute or something, right? And then that's an AoE stop. So there's so many options Hunter could have for a true AoE stop, which is a PvE term for you've got lots of mobs casting lots of stuff and you want to stop them all at once. It's been a big deal in Mythic Plus. It's also been a big deal in raiding before. Fights like Anduin are very important for this kind of thing. Options for an AoE stop in this tree include Binding Shot, actually stunning things when you cast it. Maybe add the L into Binding Shot, become Blinding Shot, and disorient the mobs when you cast Binding Shot. Territorial Instinct, stunning all enemies within 5 yards or 8 yards or something, instead of only 2 additional. Kindling Flare being baked into Flare, and having this be some sort of flashbang so that Flare is an AoE disorient, maybe on a longer cooldown, you know, increase the cooldown to 1 minute or something like that. And then we have a 1 minute AoE disorient, which would be very good and helpful for Hunter. And then there's even a fourth option of an AoE stop for Hunter would be High Explosive Trap. Obviously, this is a knock, and it knocks them away, and it's one of the craziest knocks in the game. It just yeets things in random directions all over the place. But there could be a talent that makes High Explosive Trap knock enemies up instead of out, much like the Shaman Thunderstompy thing that they do. Shamans have a talent to, instead of knocking things away, to knock them up in the air. And a Hunter AoE stop could be throwing a High Explosive Trap into the group, and they all knock up in the air and back down. And then that would be an effective AoE stop as well. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 different potential AoE stops that Hunter could have really easily and just won't be given to us, and I don't know why. Please, this is not good. This is not good, and this should just already exist. No one's going to take this to gain those 3 seconds. Even one-on-oneing a rogue, this is, you know, you're probably going to want Ghillie Suit instead or improved traps over this. Not very impressive. Yeah, so those 3 abilities are not hitting any goals. Let's read my notes for a second to see what I said. Binding Shot, I sort of just went on a rant and I didn't actually read my notes. Please redesign tile coded bindings, blah, blah, blah. Territorial Instincts is not succeeding in its goals. Yes. Stunning 3 targets is just not worth a talent spend. Correct. Kindling Fire is also not worth a talent point. Even in PvP, yada yada. Buff, Flare baseline. And then I give my 4 options for an AoE stop. Moving on. Binding Shackles. I think that this is a really disappointing talent, and in PvE you're going to avoid this talent in almost all situations. I think if it did less damage to everyone for 8 seconds, then it could be an interesting piece of utility. So, you know, you binding shot the mobs, and then all those mobs deal less damage for 8 seconds. You save your tank, You're not going to any mob that is CCable by these abilities isn't doing a lot of damage to you as the hunter in a PvE situation. In a PvP situation, yes, I see how this is a useful talent. But we're starting to say that a lot in this tree. We're starting to say, yeah, in PvP that's good, but in PvE maybe not so good. And here's some examples of that. Scout's Instincts. PvP good, PvE not so good. Scare Beast. PvE not super useful, especially as they just removed that affix that it's useful on. Concussive Shot, situationally good for both. Scrappy in PvP, very good. In PvE, pretty good. Kindling Flare in PvE, completely useless. In PvP, maybe mildly good, right? Roar of Sacrifice, PvP, good. Binding Shackles, PvP good, PvE fairly useless. Moment of Opportunity, PvP, maybe. PvE, almost useless. Ghillie Suit, PvP, fairly good. Maybe, I guess, in Arena, like when you get caught in camo, you'll have a 20% DR for 30 seconds. In PvE, pretty freaking useless. All the damage you take in PvE in camo is going to remove you from camo. I don't see how that's good. Now, quick load. PvP, fairly good. PvE, not good. Improved traps. PvP, very good. In PvE, less good. Even emergency salve. I mean, I think this is really good in PvE situationally, and so probably less so for this talent. But how many talents have we just said? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. How are you gonna take all of this if you're a PvP hunter? Like, you're not gonna take Hunter's Avoidance. You're gonna take this instead. You're gonna take that. You're gonna take that. Like, okay, let's build a PvP version of this tree, because I don't know how they're getting everything. I'll tell you that. Maybe they'll get this, entrapment. They want that. They want that. They're gonna want kick. Do they want disruptive rounds? I kind of want Scout's Instincts, probably, but I have to get Misdirection, and Misdirection sucks for PvE, so I probably miss out on Scout's Instincts, even though I want it. So I get Disruptive rounds. I mean, let's do it anyway. Binding Shot, I probably want. This I probably want. That I want. That I probably want, because stunning at 2 additional targets in PvP is really good. Scrappy I'm going to want. Extra attack speed I want. Extra crit I definitely want. This I'm going to want. The extra speed, probably want this. I'm fighting a rogue. I want this. I need Roar of Sacrifice. I need to dispel my poisons from the rogue. I need 5% crit, of course. I need Death Chakrams to deal damage. I need Board to be wild so that I can use things more often. I need Unnatural Causes. That's DPS. I need Bursting Shot. Well, I can't get Bursting Shot. Okay, maybe I don't need this. Then I can get Bursting Shot. Can I get Quick Load? No. Maybe I do take these away, but then I can't get that. So I have to spend this. So now I can get Camo. I can't get Ghillie Suit, and I can't get Improved Traps even. Maybe I don't need to start two targets. So I can get this. I can't even get my extra DPS. Okay, so I can't get Entrapment, then I get Improved Traps, but then Improved Traps is worse because I can't get Entrapment. I feel like PvP hunters are just like, where are all my points going? And then for PvE hunters, you're like, well, why do all these talents exist? I'm just going to go around them all the time. So I think there's a problem with Binding Shackles, but the problem is they're just, some of these talents are just not useful enough in PvE. This should be does less damage. If you're gonna keep this design, I would like to see it redesigned completely. But if you're gonna keep this design, I'd like to see it be at least less damage to everything for that time. Ghillie Suit, as we've said, also pretty weak and unappealing in PvE. Maybe we could make it usable in combat somehow. Maybe not drop combat, but just usable, like so that I can use it as a DR maybe. I don't know. My best design I ever saw for Ghillie Suit, and I suggested a talent called Ghillie Suit before, was while in camouflage, your cooldowns come up 10% faster, or camouflage increases the rate in which your cooldowns come up by 10%, right? That is the best design I've ever heard for a Ghillie Suit. It would be really cool to like run away in PvP, drop combat, get into camouflage, and have your cooldowns be coming up a little bit faster. And you think, well, if I can just stay in stealth, I'll come back. And also in a dungeon situation between packs, you can camo and get things back. Camo does not work the same as stealth. It has a 1 minute cooldown between stealth, so I don't think that's overpowered. I think it's very good. Moment of opportunity. The internal cooldown on this just kills the talent. Like, the cool thing about this talent would be to put a tar trap and a freezing trap and a steel trap down, and then get 3 procs off it. Jing, jing, jing. The traps themselves have cooldowns. So I don't know why this would have an internal cooldown. You would have to track that internal cooldown with a weak aura, which feels bad. And like anything that says, hey, get a weak aura for this, because you can't guarantee it, right? You're like, oh, when I throw this trap, am I going to get it or not? You don't even know, because it's been a whole minute since you last got it, and you don't know if it's 53 seconds that you're throwing this trap or 61 seconds. So I just don't like this talent with the internal cooldown. No. So everything else I kind of like. I'm okay with the Born to Be Wild not reducing survival of the fittest down. I think that that's totally acceptable to be a 1.5 minute cooldown. Other people might be upset about the notes this week, but I think it's great. I'm happy with the steel trap changes. I'm happy with high explosive shot being able to be gotten with intimidation. Honestly, this is such a nice tree. It's like, it's doing so many things right, and I don't want this feedback to sound like I think it's awful, because I really don't. I think it's really, 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 really great. But there are the things that I suggested, which I'll quickly try and recap. Concussive shot coming off improved kill shot, don't love it. Scout's instincts coming off misdirection, don't love it. I keep saying Scrappy is weak, but I don't actually think it's weak. I think that that's fine. Devil's Saw Trank, GCD economy on it is not fun. I would rather see it make Trank Shot a more powerful button on multiple in-range mobs. Multiple stacks, multiple mobs, multiple enraged stacks. Please have it do more when I push Trank Shot, not just have to push Trank Shot more. That feels bad. Disruptive rounds, a little boring. Misdirection, please make it more appealing, and not more appealing, but more useful for BM hunters. Binding Shot, I have the same gripe as everyone else. My suggestion is return it to a root, give it a 2 minute cooldown, and a target cap of 8 or something like that. That would make a lot of sense. Use this talent to do it as well. I'll take 2 talents for that. Then we need a real AoE stop. I'm okay with it not being intimidation, but we need it to be either intimidation, binding shot should stun on hit if it's not going to be a root, or high explosive trap could knock up instead of out with a different talent, or this should be baked into Flare and have Flare be an AoE disorient on a 1 minute cooldown, maybe, increase the cooldown of Flare, because right now it's 20 seconds, so that would be OP. But yeah, on a 1 minute cooldown, that'd be fine. And that would be a great PvE button for dungeons. So that's my AoE stop gripe. My last gripe is so many talents seem to be like PvP design for PvP. and I just see very little PvE use for those talents. And PvP hunters are going to be in despair. They can't get all the damage, all the utility, and all of the PvP stuff. They're just not going to be able to. It's crazy. I did have this swap places, but that's already been done, so good job, thank you. This internal cooldown on this makes it feel terrible. The traps already have a cooldown. This doesn't need an internal cooldown, and if it didn't have one, then it might be very interesting for PvE hunters to take. And my last bit is ghillie suit. As I said before, my favorite design for ghillie suit is your cooldowns come up faster while you're in camouflage. That I would love to see that. I'm sure it won't get put in, but please make ghillie suit a bit more appealing, or a bit have more use cases, because I feel like it's not going to have a lot of use cases. Every damage you take is taking you out of camouflage. I really don't see how this is the best design for a camo buff. All right, that's enough out of me. I've been yapping too much. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. My name's Slothface. You can find me on Twitter at Slothface Twitter. And you can find me on Frostmourne playing lots of Hunter in a guild called Hideout. Take it easy. Bye bye. Good luck. Have fun. GG.